to state the categories of the mental, of the intellectual judgment. The intellectual judgments are of three categories: the intellectual necessity, the intellectual impossibility, and the intellectual possibility. We will explain, inshallah. So the first one we said is the intellectual necessity. That is, the mind necessitates its existence. The mind does not accept its non-existence. And this refers to Allah Ta'ala and His attributes. The mind does not accept for Allah not to exist. So this is the existence of Allah Ta'ala is an intellectual necessity. And if you remember in the previous lessons, we gave proof, intellectual proof for the existence of Allah. We gave the proof from the Quran, and we gave the intellectual proof for the existence of Allah Ta'ala. So then Allah Ta'ala, His existence is an intellectual necessity. And of course, the attributes of Allah. The second one is the intellectual impossibility. That is, it is intellectually impossible to occur. The mind does not accept its existence. It is something that is intellectually impossible. Like what? Like the existence of a partner to Allah. This is an intellectual impossibility. We spoke last time about the attribute of power. And if you remember, we said that the power of Allah relates to the intellectual possibilities. So then we keep in mind that the power of Allah does not relate to the intellectual necessity, and it does not relate to the intellectual impossibility. What is intellectually impossible? This is important to understand well and keep in mind. Some people who are atheists. Atheists are those who do not believe in the existence of Allah. Sometimes a person, an atheist, might come to a Muslim and ask them a question that is blasphemous, that is a kufr question. So I want you to pay attention now. This question that they might ask, the answer to it is to say that the power of Allah relates to the intellectual possibility and not to the intellectual necessity or intellectual impossibility. So we do not answer them. You do not answer them with yes, and you do not answer them with no. What are some questions that they ask? We will just give one example of what some of these people ask. If they ask, can Allah create another God? Pay attention. Allah Ta'ala is the creator. He is not created. He is the creator. The existence of Allah has no beginning and no end. And we said that the existence of Allah is an intellectual necessity. The mind does not accept for Allah not to exist. So the answer is, we say that the power of Allah relates to the intellectual possibility. You do not answer them with yes, and you do not answer them with no. You do not tell them, no, Allah cannot create or does not have the power to create, and you do not answer them with yes. We say that Allah Ta'ala, He is the creator. He is not created. His existence has no beginning and no end. Allah Ta'ala is attributed with perfect attributes. The power of Allah is a perfect attribute. Allah has power over all things, and the power of Allah relates to the intellectual possibilities. So then the second category is the intellectual impossibility, and we gave an example. The example is for there to be a partner to Allah. This is intellectually impossible. The third category of the mental judgment is the intellectual possibility. What is intellectually possible to exist at a time, and intellectually it is possible to not exist at a different time. Like what? Like us. We are among the intellectual possibilities. It is possible for a person to exist at a time and not to exist at another time. There was a time we were not alive. Allah created us and now we are alive. So we are among the intellectual possibilities. That means the mind conceals its existence at one time and its non-existence at a different time. Okay, so then these are the categories of the intellectual judgments, the mental judgments. We move on to the next question, which is, what is the meaning of the statement that Allah does whatever He wills? What does it mean that Allah Ta'ala does whatever He wills? This means that Allah Ta'ala has the power to bring into existence what He eternally willed to exist. Notice we are saying what He eternally willed, because the will of Allah, as all of His attributes, is eternal. It has no beginning and no end. We said last time, we do not say, when did Allah will for something to happen? No, because when is a question about time, and time is created. Time has a beginning, it's created. God created it. And the will of Allah is not bound to time. The will of Allah has no beginning and no end. So Allah Ta'ala eternally willed for things to exist, and they exist at the time that Allah willed for them to exist. So what is the meaning of Allah does whatever He wills? This means that Allah has the power to bring into existence what He eternally willed to exist. And no one renders Allah powerless. No one can prevent what Allah willed to happen from happening. Nobody. And Allah Ta'ala does not need the assistance of anybody. Allah created the creation and He is not in need of any of the creation. He does not need anyone.